Continuing Thoreau's trip in Cape Cod. Page 279. October 12th. Why is it so late in the year? Dawn clear and bright. And after memorable breakfast, the travelers kept on westward, to the Highland Light. Sailing vessels dotted the horizon on an ocean now smooth and gentle. This is after the storm. As a lake. Quote, yet the same placid ocean used, Thoreau, quote, will toss and tear the rag of a man's body like the father of mad bulls. After arranging to stay the night at the lighthouse, they rambled. He invented rambling, I think. They rambled over the Cape spine to investigate Thoreau on the bay. Have you been to Cape Cod and know these places? Thoreau. On the bay, returning in time to receive their first lesson in lamplighting from the keeper. Quote, a man of singular patience and intelligence, unquote. The next morning, Thoreau rose to watch the sun emerge from the ocean, and the mackerel fleet set sail in the sparkling dawn. This was their last day hiking, all the way around the wrist of Cape and down into Provincetown, where they stayed 2 nights at Fuller's Hotel. On Sunday, they pottered around the nearby swamps and sand hills in wind and cold. On Monday, after a final tour of the town, they took the steamer Dassow back across the bay, reaching Boston that evening. It's not like he's there that long, it seems like. Thoreau turned this accidental itinerary into the armature for a book. He took 3 more trips, so that's how he wrote the book. He had 3 more trips to Cape Cod. Are we going to take 3 trips to Cape Cod? And began a whole new research campaign. Cape Cod struck him as the key to how New England became both new and English. You can figure out both newness and Englishness instead of ancient and indigenous. In the summer of 1849, he had prepared for his first trip there by opening a new notebook and copying into it the words of Captain Bartholomew Gosnod, the English voyager, who had named Cape Cod in 1602, and described the Indians they encountered there. Quote, the coast was full of people that ran along the shore, unquote, but who were they? Thoreau's notebook became the first of 12, quote, Indian books. A library by themselves, said Channing, in which he amassed nearly 3,000 pages of information gleaned from hundreds of sources. Explorers, settlers, missionaries, ethnographers, and Native American accounts and self-descriptions at a time when Native writers were just breaking into print. That September, after exhausting local libraries, he went to libraries a lot, exhausting local libraries, Thoreau wrote to Harvard's president, Jared Sparks, requesting permission to check out books and bring them home to Concord. Quote, I have chosen letters for my profession, unquote, he argued, so this privilege normally reserved for clergy should be extended to him as well. 1 year, Sparks penciled on the letter. Thoreau returned in November, letter in hand, and to continuous research. He met by his old friend, the naturalist Thaddeus Harris, now Harvard's full-time librarian. Harris never questioned Thoreau's right to check out all the books he needed. See, he's like just buried in books now. He had more books than I do. As soon as he had shaken the sand out of his shoes, Thoreau got busy. Soon he had 3 lectures for the 1849-50 Lyceum season. Aunt Maria pronounced a practice run, quote, very entertaining and much liked. Concord booked him for January, but only for 2 nights, so he made a few cuts before taking his audience through the shipwreck and up the beach to meet Wellfleet Oysterman. Some were puzzled by the eerie first lecture, but at the second they laughed till they cried. He has a lot of laughs, don't you think? Emerson tipped off South Danvers that Thoreau had a crowd pleaser. They invited him to speak on February 18th for only 1 night, so Thoreau rolled the 2 into 1. The streamlined version pulled in several more invitations. Altogether, things were looking up, thought Alcott. Just a few years before, he and his friends had been not merely unpopular, but obnoxious. Now even Thoreau read lectures, quote, with a decided acceptance. For the following year, Thoreau freshened up Cape Cod. So if you want to freshen yourself up, we could just go to Cape Cod. Freshened up Cape Cod with material from his second visit, including the delicious tidbit about their being suspected bank robbers. That's something you can brag about. He bragged about being a suspected bank robber and delivered it 3 more times. Their lecture trips opened up new windows on local histories. In December 1850, after giving Cape Cod at Newburysport Market Hall, Thoreau was entertained by a local naturalist who gave him a microscope's view of the circulation of fluids in plant cells. 3 weeks later, he repeated, quote, Cape Cod at the Bigelow Mechanics Institute in Clinton, Massachusetts. His host gave him an insider's tour of the cotton mills. At all these audiences were friendly. The earnest Clinton mill workers thought Cape Cod was, quote, one of those trifles, light as air, that whirled away the hour pleasantly, but one didn't learn anything. Lecture should be for self-improvement, not mere poetic whimsy. One grumpy auditor in Portland complained, though his laughter, that the Lyceum committee should pay him for time lost in listening to such trash. Another dressed Thoreau down for quoting profanity, huffing that such language is in bad taste. You think he had bad taste? But in Portland, Thoreau was blessed with one reviewer who sketched a rare portrait of him as a lecturer. He, quote, he bewilders you in the mist of transcendentalism, delights you with brilliant imagery, shocks you by his apparent irreverence, and sets you in a roar by his sallies of wit. All without any apparent effect. Thoreau's style, voice, manner were all, quote, a part of himself, along with the, quote, particular look which prepares you for something quaint and adds its effect far more than words, unquote. It was all too much to transfer to paper. One had to hear him in person. Sure, slow plotters were bewildered, but anyone with any imagination found him, quote, a rich treat, quaint, infinitely amusing, a true American original. Slow plotters still missed the deadpan wit in Thoreau, a master of the humorous story in the tradition of Mark Twain, but Cape Cod came to life before audiences that laughed through their tears, whimsical, irreverent, knowing, mischievous, lyrical, and macabre dance in darkness, as Thoreau worked it up for publication, deepening the dark undertones and calibrating his historical research to undermine America's smug narratives of manifest destiny.
We should find those, you see.
What?
We should find those talks and read.
Talks? Well, I don't know where the talks are, dear. I suppose there's either talks or you can read Cape Cod. A second front open to the north. He's like a travel writer and a naturalist. Maine woods and French Canada. All through the 1850s, Thoreau pressed forward on both fronts, filling one Indian notebook with another after another. By 1851, he was already at work on his 5th volume, pursuing field work. Whenever he could, as his vision clarified, he returned to the Cape alone. From June 25 to July 1, starting from Provincetown and retracing his original steps backwards. Interviewing the new lighthouse keeper, visiting John Newcomb, spending more time on the harbor side. The first trip had been a lark. The second was a research trip, the notebook in his hand, book in mind. Back home he wrote on, tearing the evolving drafts out of the journal, leaving nothing in it but shreds and patches, seeds beginning to expand in me, reads one fragment, which propitious circumstances may bring to the light and to perfection. It was interesting about Cape Cod. It's kind of light reading. I tried reading Cape Cod. I started it, and it seems to this book is in some ways better reading than that stuff, because she's perked it up a bit. This book is very perky. We wouldn't read it if we didn't like it, so we don't read books if we don't like them. Sorry, Charlie. Here we go. We're reading the Henry David Thoreau's life, his trip to Cape Cod, and he took many trips. Are we going to Cape Cod? I think Cape Cod may have changed since Thoreau was there.